Just 90 minutes away from their divisional round matchup against the Los Angeles Rams here at Lambeau Field. We'll get into some injury updates, plus we will also preview some key matchups in today's game. Before we get into that, as always, you know the drill. You can be a part of our conversation. If you're over on Facebook, Periscope, or YouTube, leave us a question down in the chat. We know you have lots on your mind. It is the playoffs, after all. We will get to some of your thoughts toward the end of our conversation today. It's going to be a big matchup today between the Packers defense and Jared Goff and the Rams offense. Goff was dealing with a bit of a right thumb injury. He had surgery just a couple of weeks ago. However, he was able to practice in a full capacity all week, and he has been named the starter for today's game. This past week against the Seattle Seahawks, Goff had a little bit of a hard time connecting with some of his receivers. He was 9 of 19 attempts. Pete, how are the Packers going to attempt to address and perhaps take advantage of Jared Goff and his injury?
Well, I mean, the first thing is you got to think they're going to make him beat him so they can load up on the run a little more. It makes me think of back in 1999, Brett Favre broke his thumb in a preseason game, right thumb. And he played all year, didn't miss a game, didn't miss a snap. Played okay, had a lot of good throws, but there was pretty much every game there were 3 or 4 throws where you were like, that's not right. And that can make a big difference. Any of those could be a throw that keeps a drive alive. It could be a deeper ball that is a big chunk play that sets you up to score. So Goff is going to have to deal with that. So I think it's a big edge for the Packers for this guy to have a thumb injury. And I'm sure, if nothing else, they're going to want to hit him as much as they can just to knock him to the ground, to make him use that hand to protect himself, if nothing else.
All eyes have also been on Rams wide receiver Kupp and whether or not he was going to be available for today's game. He's dealing with some knee inflammation that knocked him out of last week's wild card game against the Seattle Seahawks. According to the NFL Network, Kupp is unavailable and will be inactive in today's game against the Packers. Kupp has been one of the most prolific receivers for this Rams offense. He had 974 receiving yards this season. How are the Rams going to try to attack the Packers defense without Kupp?
This is a really big loss, I think. I was talking with an assistant coach who works in the NFC West on Monday. We had a really long conversation. When we got to the offense, I just, so what do you think of the Rams on offense? First words out of his mouth were, well, the guy who makes that go is Kupp. So if this coach is right, and he's, they scout these guys in the offseason, they play them twice a year. This is a pretty big loss for the. He drew the. He thought it was analogous to, a couple years ago taking Edelman off the Patriots. That he's a guy who's open almost every play, and he's a real security blanket, keeps the chains moving. So this could be a really big loss for the Rams, and it just makes the Packers matchups better and easier, and probably allows them to load up, as we were talking earlier, load up on the run more with Akers.
Let's take a look at some of the Packers offense versus Rams defense matchups. It is no surprise that the Packers offense is going to have a plan for defensive lineman Aaron Donald. Donald is second in the league with 13.5 sacks this season. Not only is Donald a really good pass rusher, he's also pretty stout against the run. And outside linebacker Leonard Floyd also has 10.5 sacks this season. He's pretty strong too. How is the Packers offensive front going to try to nullify this Rams defensive front?
You got to think they're going to be double teaming Donald almost all the time. You would think that's the guy who can wreck the game. I would think the Rams are going to try to match him up with Lucas Patrick a fair amount. Now, they move Donald all over, but he generally plays mostly on the inside. And you would think, because Lucas Patrick is going to be the weakest, least stout guy on their line, that's the guy they're going to want Donald to match with. And I got to assume that Corey Linsley is going to be helping out Lucas Patrick quite a bit today, and they'll be sliding protections towards him. And Packers it's good for them that they have Elton Jenkins as the other guard who can, probably handle a lot of his business on his own.
The other matchup that my eyes have been all over leading up to this game today is between the Packers All-Pro wide receiver versus the Rams All-Pro cornerback. Packers wide receiver Devontae Adams versus Rams cornerback Jalen Ramsey. Adams has had an absolutely stunning season. He's had 18 touchdowns. That leads the league among all receivers. And then you look on the other side at Jalen Ramsey. He's had a really strong season as well in coverage versus some of the best wide receivers in the league, from Seahawks wide receiver DK Metcalf to Arizona Cardinals wide receiver DeAndre Hopkins. Ramsey has only allowed 2 touchdowns this season in coverage. How are the Packers going to try to move around Davante Adams in order to keep him away from Jalen Ramsey?
Yeah, you know, they end up moving him around quite a bit, and I think that'll be the case to the extreme for this one. You know, if that the handful of scouts that I talked to, I think if you ask them, they consider Ramsey the best corner in the league. So this will be a tough matchup, and I think what they're going to do is. I was talking with Eric Baranczyk about this morning, as a matter of fact. We'll probably see a lot of Adams from the slot. Historically, this season, they have not used Ramsey to cover a slot receiver, at least if the guy lines up there. And so I think there's a pretty good chance the Packers will try to get Ramsey off Adams by lining him up in the slot, although best guess is the Rams like to keep 2 safeties deep. They'll just double. If it's not Ramsey on them, they're just going to double the guy.
Before we take some of your questions over on Facebook, Periscope, and YouTube, let's take a quick look at the Packers inactives. How does that sound for you, Pete?
Yes.
Let's do it. Sound like a good idea. All right, let's pull it up real quick. My phone is a little slow. Here we go. Inactive against the Rams is quarterback Jordan Love, cornerback Kadar Holman, cornerback Josh Jackson, outside linebacker Jonathan Garvin, tight end Jay Sternberger, and defensive lineman Kingsley Keke. Which of those names sticks out to you the most, Pete?
You know, none jumps out. I mean, the one that jumps out, I guess, and we were talking before we went on, was, Sternberger, and just what a forgotten player he's become this year. And it's that old saying that it goes back forever in this game, is the best ability is availability, and it's just been a rough year for Sternberger, and with the way Daphne's playing in that fullback role, Sternberger was the closest thing they had to that, but he's not that type of player. So Daphne's moved ahead of him, and Lewis has his niche as a blocker, and Tanyan has emerged as really a very good receiving tight end. He could have made the Pro Bowl. It was a close call between 3 or 4 guys there. So Sternberger's just kind of a lost guy. It's been a lost season for him.
Also worth noting for the Rams, not only is wide receiver Cooper Kupp inactive, so is starting guard David Edwards. The Rams are going to be down a big piece of their offensive line along the interior. How can the Packers potentially take advantage of that?
Well, they'll, the big thing if you're the Rams, I think, is they're going to want to control the ball. They're going to want to run the ball. So I don't know how this affects the timing of their run game. They run the same offense that LaFleur does, that Shanahan does. And especially in this game with Kupp being out, they're just going to want to burn clock and keep shorten the game and keep Aaron Rodgers off the field. So, anything you lose on the offensive line could hurt. Now it's a guard. I don't know a lot about the offensive line depth of the Rams. Usually this is something that they can overcome. It's not like they're missing 3 guys on their offensive line. But with Kupp being out, that's a fairly big blow for the Rams.
Let's head over to Facebook right now for some of your questions. We'll start with our friend Rick over on Facebook. Rick says that the Packers are going to have to stop Cam Akers. Akers has really come on in the last half of the season. He has gotten a lot more responsibility in the offense, and he had over 100 rushing yards this past weekend against the Seattle Seahawks, plus a couple of receptions for roughly 40 yards too. How are the Packers going to try to stop Akers both on the ground and through the air?
This is the guy that they probably, now that Kupp's out, this will be the focus for the defense. It's the Rams' best chance of winning. He is a good back now. He's not Aaron Jones. He's not a top 10 back in the league. So this should be more manageable. We've seen this run defense in the past implode, as in like the NFC Championship game, the Vikings here a couple months ago. But the run defense has been better, and like everybody, we're all interested to see how much Snacks Harrison plays and what kind of difference he makes in their run defense. My suspicion is he'll be out there 15 to 20 snaps maybe, and we'll see if he makes a couple plays or at least takes away some running lanes and just makes things tougher for Akers.
We'll keep an eye on Snacks Harrison going into today's game. We'll see if he's able to have a little bit more responsibility than he did against the Chicago Bears. Thank you so much, Rick, for participating in the live stream today. Let's go over to Levi over on Facebook. Levi wants to know, what do the Packers do to get the Rams off the field so the Packers can get more than 44 plays in? Levi's exactly right. Against the Chicago Bears, the Packers were only able to run 44 plays. It is hard to get everything you want to do in on offense if you're not staying on the field nearly as long. How can they try to keep the Rams offense off the field and get in some more plays this week?
Well, I guess for starters, you don't let them take 7.5 minutes to go 60 yards. I mean, that was kind of a short field, and it took the first half of the first quarter. They ran it out just against the Bears. That was a couple weeks ago. So that's the starting point. Is you just don't let them run and control the ball. I was just thinking about this today. Johnny Hecker was a quarterback. I don't know if he played any quarterback in college, but he definitely was in high school. And he throws the ball really well. If you look at his stats, he's got a lot of fake punts. And if you remember the game a couple years ago when the Packers were out in LA, they had the fake punt. When McCarthy was the coach, they had a fake punt, and there was a big turning point in that game. Hecker threw a pass. I wonder if we're going to see a couple tricks up the special teams game sleeve, because that's the Rams are going to be looking to get any little edge they can get, and that's one place where they might get it.
Let's go over to David now on Facebook. David wants to know, can the Packers use all three running backs at the same time? The Packers have three extremely strong running backs in Aaron Jones, Jamal Williams, and A.J. Dillon. Because the Packers only ran 44 plays against the Chicago Bears, they struggled to get all of their running backs ample touches. A.J. Dillon was only able to carry the ball once, coming off of a 2-touchdown performance against the Tennessee Titans. How likely is it that head coach Matt LaFleur tries to get his running backs a little bit more involved in the offensive game plan today?
I would think they would want to get Dillon out there way more than that last game. This is one of the reasons they brought him in, was for these kind of conditions. If by the same time he means all three of them on the field at once, I can't say I've ever seen that. I don't remember ever seeing that in a practice, so that would strike me as unlikely. But for all three to get playing time, I would think they'd want to get Dillon in there more. But how many times we've been through this, and the only time he got a lot of snaps was when he had to, because Aaron Jones got hurt and had to miss several series, and then Dillon got going, so they kept him in there.
We'll go over to Steve now on Facebook. Steve wants to know if the fans in the stadium today can be an X factor for the Packers. The Lambeau Field is welcoming over 6,000 fans into today's stadium. You might have seen them walking around behind us. Not nearly as many fans as there typically would be on a normal game day. However, certainly more fans than they've had all season. How likely is it that fans can start to bring the noise a little bit and give the Packers some added juice?
It definitely feels more like a game day. It's not the same, but there's actually life out here. There's people milling around. There's a vibe in the air. I thought I don't know what you thought, but I thought even when there were 500 people in the stands, it was noticeably better than when there's nothing. And with 6,000, I think you're going to know they're there. Now, that's not nearly enough to force anybody to go to silent count or anything like that. But I think it'll give the players a little extra juice. I think they'll notice it, and I think they'll like it.
Let's take a question here from, again, I believe Steve. Steve, we'll go over to you again. The Packers will have the advantage with field goals if needed, as kicker Mason Crosby knows how to kick in Lambeau Field. Mason Crosby has been perfect on field goals this season, and kicking in Lambeau is challenging. The winds swirl all sorts of strange ways inside of Lambeau Field. How can that be an added benefit for the Packers?
Yeah, he's done it so often, how many years now? And I know he's told me before, if the flags up top are blowing in one direction, there's a pretty good chance that on the field, at the field goal height where you're kicking the ball, it's going in the other direction. So they do swirl a lot. I think it can change during the game. He's been through it so many times. I think he has a good feel. It's not real windy, but there is a breeze out here. It's just thinking of the weather. I think I looked at the weather app before we went on, and it said 35 degrees. Does not feel like 35. Feels more like about 25. It's not terrible cold, but if the sun were out, it would be a lot different. If the Rams caught a break, then it's not bitter cold. But it's not like this is super comfortable.
We've got many people in the comments right now that are saying they wish it was snowing. They wish it was a little bit windier. However, Pete, as you said, it doesn't really feel like 35 degrees out here. I'm not going to lie. My hands are a little bit cold today.
Yeah, mine too. And, you know, with the stronger wind, I'm guessing that's the one weather element that Rodgers is glad isn't here, because it affects him as much as anybody with those passes. I mean, what game was that early in the year where those winds were so strong and he threw, I think it was, he missed a wide open, somebody down the seam. It might have been Lewis down the seam. And he said after the game that the wind blew that ball like, you know, 3 or 4 yards from where he was throwing it. So the cold, the snow, the wet, I think he's fine with that. The wind, he's probably okay that it's not a super blustery day.
Well, we'll see exactly how the weather evolves as we continue on throughout the night. We'll keep you updated over on PackersNews.com. Make sure you're following us on all of our social media channels. We'll have lots of updates throughout the game for you over there as well. That is going to do it for us today, everyone. Enjoy the game. For Pete Dougherty, I'm Olivia Reiner. We will see you next time.